You know, there's a lot of great OU podcasts, but there's only one where the horns are always down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Horns Down Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the Horns Down Podcast with your host, Chris with a K, and my guy, Be Wise Fitness, Barry Wise. OUInsider from the Barry and Mack podcast, a friend of the show. Hasn't been on here in a while, but hey, it doesn't matter. He's here right now. So, people, we're going to talk about OU. We're going to get some thoughts, and we're going to ask some questions to one of the insiders himself, right? Because I heard one on the radio today. I love listening to the franchise, whatever. I'm just, trying to get some lunch real quick. But I heard a question on the radio, and I said, I got to ask Barry that. I definitely got to ask Barry that. So, Barry, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and your content. Tell them about what you're doing with Mackey, everybody, man. Just go ahead.
Yeah, man. All right, yeah. So first of all, go follow me on X at BWiseFitness and Instagram at BWiseFitness. That's the letter B, WISE Fitness. And each and every week, maybe even tonight, me and former Sooner wide receiver 2000 national champion, Mr. Damian Mackey, we do a podcast called The Barry and Mack Show, and it is partnered with OUInsider.com. So if you're not a member on OUInsider.com, go over there, get yourself a membership. If you want team news, recruiting news, all of the insider information on the coaching search, if you want to know deeper details about recruits, what's going on, where are they, what do they want to do in terms of looking at the offense, where it might go, which I'm sure is going to be a discussion tonight. Go over to OUInsider.com, get yourself a membership. I'm posting over there. I do a feature called Zooming In, where I take a look at a few plays. One of the plays I looked at this past week, and I'll just give a little tease, Jacob Jordan, Brennan Thompson. I'll just leave it at that. It's very interesting. Go over there, take a look. Also took a look at some of the offensive line stuff on that one. If you haven't checked out the X, I posted it over there. It's worse than you think. Gabe has alluded to it. I just put it out there in video. But Gabe from the Oklahoma Breakdown, Teddy and Gabe do a wonderful job. Big fans of that show, as everybody is. But some of the stuff Gabe has talked about, I put video to, and out there for the Sooner Nation to see on the interwebs, as they say, Chris. And so go over there and take a look, man. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm ready to get to it.
No, for sure. So, people, you see that ticker at the bottom. Like, subscribe, and follow. Definitely like this video, subscribe to the channel, all the rest of that stuff. The goal is get to 1,000. We're so close. We're getting there. But like I said, I got Barry on the show with me, so we're not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time. So, Barry, speak to the people, man. Tell everybody exactly what are your thoughts about this team, or about this season at the very least, 7 games in.
Man, I think it's a surprise for the fans. I don't think, I haven't really been on the show during the season. I think it is it's a spot where OU didn't think they would be here with what they had coming back, with the continuity that they were able to keep on the staff, with the staff, and with the defense that was coming back, the players that were coming back. All-American is Stutzman and Bowman. You got a defensive line that is taking that next step, and that's not to discredit or say they haven't, but simply put, I don't think 4-4 was the expectation at all. You had a lot of fans saying if OU went 9-3, that would be solid. Some fans saying that not good enough, right? And it is OU. Couple losses is really all the fan base can generally bear in a given year. And the fact that you're sitting at 4, you had 3 straight double-digit losses. That you hadn't had that since going back to 1998. It's a real problem with where they sit. And Venables had talked about during the year places he had been. They don't make midseason changes, but as we had talked about on the show, it's desperate times call for desperate measures. And in this particular case, he had no choice. The fan base was irritated. You had fans during the South Carolina game begin to boo. And these athletes, yes, they're getting paid. yeah, they're still young men, and they're still having to go through the hustle and the grind of going to school and being there. It is hard to practice all week and then have that be the product. And I think Venables not only felt an obligation to the fan base, I think you'd probably agree with me. I think he felt an obligation to his players, Chris. I think he felt that if he did not seek or try to make a change, something to spark it, and he even said as much in the presser, if he did not try to spark some change, spark some excitement, this season could have got worse. And at the end of the day, it might have been him at the end of the season looking at being the moving part instead of Latrell, who ended up being the guy on the chopping block. And I'm sure we'll get into the Ole Miss game, but I mean, just to put the season in a nutshell, it's been a disappointment, but more than a disappointment, it's been OU fans saying, man, how far are we really from being where we want to be in the SEC? And it's even worse when you look at a team like Texas. Yes, they got beat by Georgia, but Sark has that thing rolling a little bit. They are a good program. I know this is Horns Down podcast and all day, every day, but we got to call a spade, and they were more ready. And I think that just puts a little more salt in the wound.
More ready or more lucky that they didn't get bit by the injury bug as well. I mean, there's a lot of excuses that we could make and all the rest of that stuff. As I've told people and talked to people, excuse me, let me back up. As I would say on other shows and this show especially in the past, Aaron Rodgers. And I know Aaron Rodgers is going through some tough times right now, some hard times, Daddy, right? Dusty Rose. But I would say relax. RELAX, relax. Okay? First off, I feel that a competent OC, a competent offense, with that, you're probably looking at yourself above 500 and you're winning a bunch of those games. The offense has been less than stellar. A lot of the things that have happened with the offense or with the defense, some of the numbers, a lot of the numbers is just an indictment of what this offense has been. But here, I'm gonna try to spin this as best I can. Turn a negative into a positive. One thing that you should be excited about, one thing you should be happy about, is the amount of young guys due to injuries, due to being forced to play early and everything. A lot of the young guys that are getting snaps now in meaningful games, meaningful minutes. The Jaden Hardys of the world, the Michael Boganowskis, Eli Bowen on offense. Even though sometimes it's not showing up all the time, but Kearney, Carion, those guys are getting snaps. That's going to help you in the long run. If you get a competent OC, okay, to come in here, and I've damn near said it on my pod and a bunch of pods, I feel like the next OC that's out there looking at this job right now, that's eyeing this job, should feel cocky as hell. You're telling me that I get to come here with that defense that could potentially be better, statistically at least. I know you're losing Bowman and I know you're losing Stutzman, but could potentially be better with the talent that's in each of those rooms. Come on, man. You got to think about the talent collectively, not just losing one player. You take it out collectively. Now, I love Stutz. I love Bowen, but you could be better at those positions next year as well. RSJ comes back. Like I said, Hardy, Powers, Boganowski, those guys are going to be locked in and loaded. But what I would say is that you're pairing that OC with that defensive mind behind it. A lot of these games, you've only allowed 21 points. If you take away all the interceptions and all the turnovers in the South Carolina game, you gave up 15 points.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know if it was the fifth, we all be drunk, but I'm just telling you, people, I feel like competent offense will help this team get to where they want to be at. And I think that we could segue into the Ole Miss game, and you can kind of talk about different pieces that you want to talk about. That was a very, very winnable game. There were people in here in the chat last week when I was on with Chris Mason and Jason that were saying, hey, no, you guys are delusional if you think we're going to win this game or this and that or whatever. And I kept telling people, look, the chess match between BV and Lane Kiffin will figure itself out. However, we don't really know what to expect from JJF, and we definitely don't know what to expect from Pete Golding, because Pete Golding can come out there and call a hell of a game, or he can put Walter Nolan at his safety or a nickel position and try to he can put him at corner, or run him at nickel and try to figure that out. The first half was beautiful football. Literally, almost had tears coming out of my eyes, scoring a touchdown, moving the ball, looking competent on offense, being able to run, being able to get guys out there in space. It was north-south instead of being east and west. It was beautiful football. You play complementary football. That is the first game where I can honestly say we played complementary football up to a point. Now, it wasn't perfect all the way through. Second half, still have some question marks. There are some key plays on offense that I want to point out to you, but I'll give you the floor now. But I feel like, and this is not me necessarily being a homer, I'm just being real. There's beauty in the stress. There's beauty in the trouble and the fire right now. There's a lot of young guys that are actually getting a lot of time that they wouldn't have, and we've all said that this will be a great year for us to go into the SEC, and it hasn't been. But that 26 year and the year following that, those are the years, that 25 year, and the 26 year, those are the years that you're like, hey, we could probably make some noise those years. So that's my piece.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're wrong, and we've talked about it on the podcast. Everybody is fans of the usual suspects. A Shanahan, a Cole, or a Marion, right? Will Stein would be a good guy to get, but at the end of the day, this is Oklahoma, and you're also Oklahoma in the SEC. And what I don't think fans can really undersell is the value of bringing in somebody who is not going to walk on campus and immediately just be enamored because it's the best talent they've ever seen in a locker room on the offensive side of the ball. That the amount of small school OCs that make big hay in the SEC early on, you can count on one hand. It's very few. Now, Big 12, that was a different thing. The Big 12 is where a lot of those guys cut their teeth. Big 12, Pac-10, Mountain West. You had a guy like Urban Meyer bring his system from Utah to Florida. That's a success story. A guy like Mike Leach was able to make it work. But typically it's guys who had cut their teeth at big-time programs, who had their offenses on the biggest stage, that generally also were able to make it work. Kiffin had experiences at different programs. Sarkisian, same kind of deal. So I think it's interesting that fans are immediately going towards some of these guys, and I'm not going to necessarily throw names out there, but a guy we talked about on the podcast, and it really wasn't a name that's necessarily realistic or somebody that we're hearing, but it's an example of the culture change that needs to happen, and that's a guy like James Coley at Georgia. The D-Mac and I were doing it live on the pod and discussing that he's a guy, yes, he hadn't called plays in a minute, but OU to win, what wins football games in the SEC? It is being physical. It is having a downhill run game. It is having an offensive line that is not only physical and nasty, but technical. And OU, not just my opinion, but Gabe as well and many others, technically OU does not have the sauce on the offensive line right now, right? Maybe is it the players? Is it the coaching? There's a lot of questions there, and I don't think we truly know. To go to the Ole Miss game, you were right. It was totally winnable. It was a game where the offense came out and showed their best collective effort. And one of the things we said was it looked like there was a plan. It was the first time all year they came out in a lot of two tight end, one back. They ran that personnel almost the entire first drive. They were strategic in saying, we're going to try and create some mismatches. I think where the criticism can happen, and maybe it's just too late in the year, the fact that you've got packages set up for a guy like Bauer Sharp, packages set up for a guy like Jake Roberts, but you don't have nothing for a guy like Reagans or a guy like Petaway. that is an indictment, but maybe that's an indictment on the previous regime, not taking the offseason to figure out who their playmakers are and just putting them in the best position to succeed. The best people as OCs are guys who put their players in the best position to succeed. A Riley is a great example, right? Every single year, that offense morphed just a little bit from Baker to Kyler to Jalen to Caleb. It was never a finished product. It always had a little bit of room to, yes, the bones of it looked the same, but they were running a lot more on the edges and on the perimeter with Kyler. And then Jalen comes in, they're running QB power. They're running, and with Baker, it was a little more true air raid, right? And with Caleb, you had a good mix of everything. And then, of course, he flourishes at USC for that 1 year. It's kind of hating a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think OU needs to go bring in a guy like that. To go back to the Ole Miss game, I think it highlights that OU does have talent, that, yes, they're still far away. They're not as far away as we think. And maybe this is to pump a little sunshine. OU still has players on that team who were elite recruits who can really play. And Lebby wanted those guys for a reason. Lebby's offense, well, we can say it. Arnold looked better under the Lebby system, right? With arguably, he didn't have a Deion Burks, right? He didn't have a guy like Deion Burks. He's going to play in the NFL. Deion Burks is a legitimate wide receiver, and he didn't have the luxury of having a player like that. And I think it comes down to, if OU can get let's stay on the game. The offensive line was the reason at the end of the day that game was lost. One of the things schematically that we talked about on the pod was Ole Miss figured out that the tackles just can't block, and they kept widening their guys out, and OU never had an adjustment, which tells you it's one of two things. Either the system, either Joe John Finley does not understand the schemes of football, which I don't think that's the case. I would imagine that he has a pretty good understanding of football, given who he was around. Your Kevin Wilsons, your Chuck Longs, and then around Lebby later on, that there was a lot of reason to believe that Joe John knows football. The fact that they didn't have an adjustment like a speed draw or a QB draw or something to keep the ends on their heels, something to force those guys to not try and come in with their ears pinned just quite so hot. The fact that there was nothing like that in the playbook ready to go that they could get to is an indictment. That's an indictment on the system. But I think Jackson played his best game. It was the most Jackson-like game of what we thought we were going to see, right? The play where Jackson has the escapes the pocket and rolls to the right and hits Jordan for the touchdown. That is the play I put on OUInsider. And yes, the finish on that play is very cool, but man, Jacob Jordan can play. He's the best route runner on the team, and you could see it on that play. He sets that up, and he's open not because of the scramble. He's open because of what he does just off the line of scrimmage that other guys aren't doing. And I think had the offensive line been able to kind of hold serve, or maybe if OU had some adjustments, and I'm curious to hear what you got to say, if they had the ability to adjust a little more in real time, have a counter for the counter, I think they probably win that game, man, because they couldn't keep it rolling. And that was a problem. That they couldn't keep things moving offensively, and they stalled out way too much. And I think that ended up being the ultimate killer, and why they couldn't do it, because they started out, it was really good. It was good stuff, man. So curious your thoughts.
No, I agree with you on that play specifically. I felt like, that to me was a sign that, okay, Jackson. Okay. All right. I got you. You're good. You're good. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. I felt it's not that I'm not familiar with your game. I forgot that you can make plays like that. You can do things like that. Sound with the football. You saw maturity. I know Jason asked me I think last week, kind of, what are your top 3 things you want to see from the offense? And I for me, the very first thing on top of the list was I want to see a heavy script for Jackson to get him comfortable. I want to get him in rhythm. I want to get
Which
him.
You did.
Yeah, and you did.
Yeah.
You saw him going through progressions. You saw him being decisive with the football, and you said, okay, that's the Jackson Arnold we've been waiting on, right? Mm-hmm. To me, I think the only bad thing that I really have to say about the offense, first half at least, is that you left some points out there on the field. As my uncle, he's in here, as he would always challenge me, he would say, hey, nephew, it's not about the points that you scored. Okay, you had 25 tonight. Probably could have had 30 something if you would have hit those, free throws. If you would have hit those, hit that 3 in that corner, hit that layup or so that you missed or whatever, right? And so we left some plays out there because play calling was perfect up to a point, right? Why do I say that? Because those pop passes, I just don't understand that. I felt like, I talking to Jay. Jay was like, well, short side of the field, I get that you Chris, you want to run like some type of sprint flood that way. And I'm just like, you got to do something, get him out there in space and give him options, give him a Barrett Sharp or Jake Roberts basically running with him. And then on the other side, give him Kearney, give him Raggins, give him Brennan Thompson, basically run almost like a little short post, little skinny post, a little orbit route or something like that to give him levels to where, okay, he can make that happen. But at the same time, you're giving him blockers for him to possibly go and score. Because to me, that's a better play than running a pop pass, right? I thought the run game was good. Still kind of surprised, watching that game. If you'd have told me, hey, Barnes was 16 for rushed 16 times for 67 yards, I would have been like, after watching that game, you told me that, I would have been like, are you sure he didn't rush for more? Because it felt like he had 100 yards. But
it felt like a 100-yard game.
It felt like a 100-yard game. I thought Tatum's our most explosive back right now. Until we get Sasha back, he's our most explosive back. Got to hang on to the ball.
Yeah.
Pass blocking has to get better. But there was a clear and decisive it was a clear and decisive chess move. As soon as Sexton went down, they started attacking Howland. They started attacking. It was crazy.
And that was that they figured out we could widen these splits on these guys.
Yes.
And it's just a beeline, right? And Eichert's talked about it. I've shown it. It's technically, if you can't kick step and you can't get depth on your drop, right? For the football guys on here, I know it differently, not in football terms. For me, I work with guys to be able to explode in and out of these positions. So I see what has to happen, and I'm more so watching a game from like, what are the mechanics of the movement, not coaching the football stuff, right? Not doing the football junk. It is, what do they have to do? And it's physics, right? If you don't get your weight out over as far as you can to cut that angle off from that guy and be able to cut it off on balance, and you take, so what Howland did on one of the more costly sacks, because OU was like inside the 30 on one of them, and it knocked him out of field goal range late in the game. They could have at least shortened that thing to take another possession away. I think it might have put it as a 1-possession game at that point, right? But because Howland, if you're watching here, and this is your line of scrimmage, Howland took a step to on his first step is to the side, not back, right? So I guess it would be the other way if you guys watching on camera. He took it to the side, and what that edge does is it's like playing basketball. It's like doing a crossover. When you're watching the hips of that guy, as soon as that guy gives you a lead foot, you're going the other way. As soon as he commits to shading you this way, you're trying to cross over and get inside of him. And that's all that edge guy was doing. You didn't have to be spectacular. Anybody on OU's ball club could have done the same thing. against the tackle. So that was the big problem.
But it felt like he had dead hands as well. Like his hands were not active at all. I'm like at the very least, I always think with my tackles, I'm always thinking, hey, even if you can't, even if you're getting beat on the step, you could still use your hands to try to guide that guy away from.
You could. That's where your feet got to come in. Yeah, 100%.
I'm just like, you could still, at the very least, I'm just thinking to myself, hey, if that guy is beating me outright, I'm trying to push down as he's dipping, as he's trying to dip that shoulder to really, to bend, right? I'm trying to push down at the very least. I'm not trying to hold. I'm trying to push down. He's not active with his hands. And I mean, Logan Howland is a project. I think we all understand 100%. That. And I think he was is another tough situation that you put a young guy in. But one thing that I don't like, one thing I don't necessarily like about the quarterback's mechanics, and this is something even from the days where we had Levy and Dillon, is that on plays like that, I feel like, hey, Jackson, Joe John, we got to understand that, and I get these are just the mechanics that are being taught and practiced every single day, right, to the quarterbacks. But there are times where they are turning their back to basically half of the field. And I feel like that's what's taken away. Like, I think we've all seen it to where it's almost like they just stand up, their back is completely turned to that side. And I'm like, look, you just put in Logan Howland. You got to help him just as much as he's helping you right now, right? Because you're turning your back to that play. They're beating him. They've been beating him. You got to figure something out. You can't turn your back. But I understand it. That play is – because it to me, it felt like, okay, well, the play is obviously going to that side because that's the side that he's turned to, and that's where he's supposed to look. But as many times as Brandon Thompson is open or whatever the case may be, obviously we're not finding him and getting him active. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, I would rather go at Princely, Chris Paul, or whoever the hell was the guy that kept beating Howland. I would rather go at that guy opposed to put my quarterback in a situation where, hey, this guy is getting beat clearly. Now I'm eventually going to either get a fumble. They're going to get a fumble or they're going to hurt my quarterback because I'm putting him in awkward situations. And so, I mean, there were things schematically that should have worked, that did work, that should have worked, that could have worked, all the rest of that. It was just that at some point they just pinned their ears back and just said, hey, we're going to get to the quarterback. Screw all the rest of this.
100%.
And I felt like that's what Kiffin did. Kiffin went in there and said, hey, I feel like Kiffin went in there and said it told Pete Golden, like, hey, let's stop doing all the other stuff, dude. Like, let's just rush. We don't have to do anything crazy. We don't need to do anything crazy. Let's just get to the quarterback. This offense,
wide nine, stand that guy up and go.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it was frustrating to watch. That piece of it was very hard to watch. I think you're right. Well, why don't you make the adjustment to attack that side? I think that's one of the reasons Hawkins did have success early and the teams just adjusted and spied him and kept him in the pocket. The reason he had success against Tennessee was his trigger on getting outside the pocket was a little better, and he would feel that pressure, escape, and then now you can make some hay on the edge. And Jackson did that at times, but it wasn't enough. You're totally right. I did see a stat, like 5 to 6 of the sacks came in the final 10 or 11 plays. Well, was that right, chat? I mean, if that's right, that is an indictment just on, yes, you got to throw the ball, so a lot of your stuff has to develop faster, but you got to have a counter to the counter. And, Howland, I'm actually a fan of Howland, especially on the measurable side. He is a guy who can play, right? But technically, he is still very, very green. He's a guy who still has a lot of development to go. It's still too early for him. It is one of those things, though, that makes me go, I don't want to brush people the wrong way, but it's probably why Caden Green said, I should be able to play tackle on this team. And one of the reasons why he wanted to bounce. Granted, he's not playing now where he's at, but still the point remains is you got to have development with these young players. And I've seen the the knock on Coach Schmidt, on Jerry Schmidt, the strength and conditioning coach, and I just don't think it's valid at this stage of the game because Howland turned himself into a piece. He went from arriving on campus as a lean green tight end Lane Johnson looking guy to now he's pushing 315, 320.
I don't put blame on Smitty. That's not that. I've seen the improvement in the physicality of the players out there. Some of the players that are playing, hell, seeing Caden Helms out there, that's nothing but short of amazing because if he's getting hurt on little if he's getting hurt on little ticky-tack stuff, I know the surgery, but if he's getting hurt on little ticky-tack stuff and being physical in practice, then something's wrong with the training, but they got him out there on the field, right? But what I would say is just simply just right here. I think it's a mix of a lot of things, Wanye left when he had another year to be here. Guyton is in the league right now, had another year. Anton Harris he had another year. You had a bunch of guys that had some extra years. Then you couple that with the fact that you weren't taking big classes like you're trying to now when in the past regime. It's a lot of things. You got guys that transferred out that just didn't really work out here. The Bray Walkers, the Savion Birds, guys like that. So, at the end of the day, regardless of where those guys are at right now, the Aaron Parks and all of those guys could still help bring a quality unit here. I think that I kind of overestimated the offensive line. I thought, okay, well, we got Beaton Bowe down to fix it. I think Beaton Bowe is still a really good coach, but I will say that you had a lot of continuity there with the offensive line with Levy simply because Levy was there for 2 years, right?
Sure.
One thing here's my excuse that I'll throw out there for Beaton Bowe, and I think people are still going to tell me that, hey, that's still not good enough, Chris. But my excuse for Beaton Bowe, coupled with everything that I just said, would be that your offensive line wasn't where it needed to be, strength and conditioning wise, and plus you experienced probably the worst play calling year here at OU, not in his time as a head coach, but of Lincoln Riley. To me, that last year, the year prior into that last year of him being here kind of bled over. Those were the worst play calling years that I've seen from Lincoln, at least with an OU headset on. But then you go to Levy, and then it's this different system of the GT counter or whatever. You're trying to get a home run play off of that. You're trying to pick up a lot of yards to, hey, the scheme is pretty simple. It's a zone one, but we are trying to get that one-on-one battle either with the linebacker or that whoever's that DB that's going to come up at that second level. We win that, then we're talking either touchdown or we're talking big gains, right? So you go from that to whatever the hell Seth Luttrell was trying to do, which mostly was just inside run, right? So
with a guy who can't leverage it, and we can talk about running back rotation, but with a running back who can't do it. I love what Barnes did this past Saturday. It's the best he's looked because he was quick hitters. He was in space, but man, watching him catch that little flare and taking 5 or 6 steps before he got upfield, guys, that is not good. That's not good feet. I'm just telling you guys right now that Tawi catches that ball, that's 1-2, and he's out the gate. No elite running back playing at Oklahoma should be taking 5 steps on a catch before he's getting north and south. That's not good stuff. Barnes has his things that he's good at. To me, he feels like a Kewan Jones type back. If he was running I formation at the goal line, straight ahead, diving forward, that's great. But the agility and the issue is, and I would actually, I'm not going to defend Beaton Bowe because I think there's a lot of layers, and I think you're right. I'm not going to defend it, but what I will say is last year, the run game could have been better, much better, if Tawi was your lead guy all year long.
If you just went ahead,
Tawi was the guy. Yeah.
At least until Sawchuck got healthy and established himself.
That's true.
I will say this. I will say this right here. I was at that Texas game with my aunt. It was painful to watch the running game because for everything that Trey Weiser had done to kind of stretch that game out and kind of get it basically out of hand for Texas.
Yeah.
You could have saw the same thing from Barnes if he would have just hit the hole and just went, right? It kind of frustrates you, kind of like when Trey Sermon was here, maybe sophomore year, kind of junior year, but mostly sophomore year, dance just a little bit too much. That was Trey Sermon's main problem, just dance a little bit too much, just hit the hole. That was the biggest difference between he and Kennedy Brooks, in my opinion. They had similar vision. But Kennedy Brooks, especially that year with Collar, was just like, I mean, hey, he's hitting that hole, he's gone.
And Kennedy, man, I'll say that I'll defend this to the end of the earth. Kennedy was special with some certain things. There's some certain things he did, like movement economics, that I probably got some videos out there that were like, I've done deep analysis on Kennedy. Might be my favorite back to ever play it up. My favorite, like, tier 2 back, not like your ADs and your Mixons and your P Ryans, but like in that next tier with like your Damian Williams, your Alan Patricks. I put Quentin Griffin in that tier 1 for sure. He's up there with those guys. But man, in terms of that tier 2, kind of reading the comments there, he was elite, and I would agree with some of your sentiment. For me, Barnes, one of the things that Barnes doesn't do that frustrates me, because Tatum is really good at it, is when you're a good running back, and I'm going to analogize basketball again, when you're a guard, you're not worried about the guy who's in front of you. You're worried about the second level defender, and Barnes just does not run. And you could argue maybe this is a little bit of coaching, right? At the end of the day, there are some things I actually laid out what I would do from a performance perspective with a guy like Barnes. There are things you can do to help enhance that vision, the perception, the ability to assess and process information. But he doesn't set up backers. He doesn't set them up with the way he attacks angles. If you watch a guy like Tawi, watch every single back at Georgia, even the guys LSU puts out there, they will hit the line of scrimmage and they'll press the hole, but they're also doing something even more nuanced. They're feeling the flow of that backer and getting him to commit. They're not worried about the defensive lineman. Defensive lineman got no chance with the quicks that you're going to be producing. The defensive lineman has no shot. It is about, can you beat the backer, and then can you beat the safety one-on-one or beat the corner on the edge? If you can do that, then you're out the gate. And OU has not had a back playing who can do that.
We real quick plug, check out the guys at Championship Standard. They do a great job. Guys, we were all wrong. We thought that Latrell's system was going to work. Obviously, we were wrong, but still, go and check out my guys, man. They make a lot of great content over there. A lot of great content. But I would just say that it's been one of the things that is okay. So I said this about Latrell's offense, and I felt like nobody was really saying it, but I think what you saw this past weekend was exactly what you were trying to see with Latrell. Like, hey, look, we understand this is OU. We're not going to make any excuses. Okay, we know our top 5 receivers are out, right? We know this offensive line has been injured and has not been able to gel and all the rest of that. Even though you've had some of the same lineups and different things out there, for whatever it's worth, just that hasn't been great, right? Quarterback play has been an issue. Why don't we condense the playbook, and why don't we run our? I'm not a play caller. I don't get paid to do any of that. But why don't we condense the playbook, call our best 10 plays, and just run different variations of those plays, run different things off of that, right? Why don't we do that to make it easier on what's going on? You can't even run simple offense. You can't simplify the offense and just run that, which is what we saw against Ole Miss. Which is very like, hey, we're going to be decisive with what we're doing. Everything that we do has intent behind it. Like, this is all intentional, right? but you can't even do that. But at the same time, another thing that's been very frustrating about the offense is just that at times where you're just like, hey, I hate to do the whole Tebow thing, but we're this close, guys, right?
Yeah.
Because you sit there just going back to the running game, there's some holes that are there. There are some holes that are
100%.
there. Go back to the Texas case. There's some guys that's running down the field wide open. You go to the Ole Miss game. Brennan Thompson's open a lot. Like we gotta, but it seems if the offensive line is doing their job, it seems like nobody's getting separation. But when the offensive line is not doing their job, fumble, interception, sack, whatever. Offensive line is doing their job, 2-yard pickup on a run, even though there's a wide ass hole that's right there, and for whatever reason. So it's just always something that's off, right? And so that has been kind of the frustrating part. I think the most frustrating thing is just the simple fact that we couldn't figure out that we need to condense this playbook. We need to run the best plays that our quarterback feels the most comfortable with and run a system for him. Not putting in 50 new plays, not putting in a crap ton of this and that or whatever the case may be. Just, I don't know. But
yeah, I agree.
Just kind of the segue into just coaching. What are your thoughts about the coaching overall? Are you wanting to see maybe there be a little bit more of a shuffle as far as an OC coming in here with a different vision, as far as maybe the running back coach, O-line, even wide receiver, even though you hate to lose some of those guys? Are you wanting to see a big shake up, or what are your thoughts about that?
I think the next guy who comes in, I think the only coach that's safe is Emmett Jones. And I don't even know, depending on what they want to do, if he's safe. If it's a guy who has strong DFW ties, who has strong ties to the South, who he can bring in and know he can bring in as a receivers coach, a la, I'm trying to think, Steve Spurrier Jr. has been at that for a minute, but he's the kind of guy who is very player friendly. People like him. He's a good technical coach. Yes, he's been at Oklahoma before, but the receivers at Tulsa do look good. Well, when they are running their stuff, they have other issues kind of going on there in terms of internal structure, what's going on with the program. But I think every spot is up for grabs, Chris. I think all of them with the new regime. Because I'll say this, and this is what I said on the pod. Actually, I think a short is going to get posted later. The last time OU played a physical brand of offense was January 1st, 2018 against Georgia in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
OU has not. You had some vestige of that in 2018. You would see some, occasionally some glimmer of that. But physicality has left this program the same way it left the defense after 2011, maybe, right? Was the last time up until, some light with Stryker in 13, but then you get cooked in 14 by Baylor. And then that was really, all she wrote. Then the defense struggled mightily from then on. And what you needed was a complete overhaul. Mm. You needed a complete shift. You needed a brand new regime. Think about it. If the offense was this bad and this was, think about this from a defensive perspective. If the defense, you'd be saying everybody's got to go. It's not that it's just bad, Chris. It's historically bad. Mm-hmm. Here's the 2014 offense was better than this. The 1998 offense was better than this. This offense is so bad that they're not good at running the ball and they're not good at throwing the ball. Mm-hmm. So at a place like OU, everybody's job is on the line. I think Jones gets a pass because of the injuries. Obviously Burks was a great get. Everybody thought Jaden Gibson was going to be a monster. And we see what OU can do when you got a guy be able to get open. But it also is an indictment that Pettaway is not where he needs to be and a guy like Jordan has to step in there and be the guy. But that's because Jordan has done the work, man. And I don't want to discount that. He's not just like, fast and white. Shout out to all the white receivers out there. But it's not just that. He is a very good route runner and very technically sound. And you could, is he bought in and listening to Emmett's coaching? Probably. But he's probably invested a lot of time himself. But I think every spot on that offense is completely up for grabs. If you haven't, you're so far away now from a physical brand of offense that you need. And this is why we argued for a Coley or a guy like him who has been at a program recently like Georgia, who's seen it done, who's not going to come in and say, these are the best looking players I've seen. He's going to come in and say, this is OU and this is all you got. Yeah. This is who's playing offensive line for you guys. This is who your center is. This is who is running the ball for you. These guys don't look like Georgia backs. You think you're going to win a national championship and not have backs like they got at Georgia? Mm-hmm. That to me is the next step, right? And I think Venables, seeing in the comments, he's got to hit on this, and in order to hit and have it be give the offensive coordinator the biggest chance to succeed, I think it's got to be a situation where he allows that guy to run that side of the ball the same way that Stoops did for Riley. And you saw what happened from 14 to 15. Look at the jump that they took. They were in the college football playoff the next year just because they had a trigger man.
Well, since you bring up Riley, but you said something earlier that kind of threw me off too. So I'm thinking to myself, the most Lincoln Riley move that you could potentially make would be to go get GJ Kinney from
probably
Texas State. That's, and people, we're not just talking about Texas State. We're talking about incarnate word with what he was doing with Cam Wood, right?
Sure.
So if you want to go that route for a younger coach that honestly could be a head coach, I know people say, well, maybe he takes the Baylor job. And I'm like, if Baylor wants to make kind of like a splash, yeah, I could see that. But I would be more inclined to go get Jeff Traylor or something like that, even though he's making a crap ton of money down there at UTSA. But I think Baylor would want to go with more of a seasoned head coach. But I would, if you could get JG Kinney to be your offensive coordinator, bring his offensive coordinator to be your quarterback's coach, possibly your tight ends coach as well. I kind of like that, man. I like that.
I don't hate that.
Colton Necky still. I like Colton Necky simply because of the offensive line perspective. Because I feel like he's always done more with less. This year, he's actually got some big hog mollies, so it makes sense why when they are clicking, Penn State is definitely a team to watch out for.
For sure. And then at Oklahoma, my only knock would be is can he go out there and get the elite guys that OU needs to get? That would be my only – but continue. That would be my only, devil's advocate.
With Colton Necky?
Yeah, is can he go and can he go into the South, or can he find a guy who can recruit, who can go get a Michael Fasusi, who can that would be the question for me.
Although I do want those guys, the reason why I would bring him here is because offensive line wise, I mean, the stuff that he had them doing at Kansas, I mean, he was fighting two battles. One, trying to make up for size and athleticism, but two, he still did some really, really interesting things with that offensive line as far as just kind of the scheme. The scheme sometimes, I think there's the tail of the tape will tell you, hey, this guy, he just calls some really great offense. But if you look at it, just watching it live, it looked like it was a hot mess at times because people are going here, people are going there. But it was designed. It was almost like it was designed chaos at some point. But he was doing that to make up for what they didn't have. So I like the Colton Necky piece. Obviously, I know people want Will Stein or whatever, but I think you're probably better off seeing him as the head coach of OU than you would see him as the OC. I think he would either
he would be big time.
He
would be big time. But for Venables, I think you're going to have to go get a guy like that. I think you're going to have to get a player or a coach who is at the level of what Oregon did or Ohio State did in going to get a Kevin Wilson, in Chip Kelly, right? That is the kind of OC that Oklahoma should be able to get, right? Because I think Venables can 100% duplicate what Dan Lanning has done. People forget, Oregon was in a much better spot when Lanning took over. And this isn't to defend Venables or to criticize Lanning, because Lanning has done a phenomenal job. But Oregon was a much more healthy program from the internal workings than OU was when Venables took over. Defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball, that they were just in a much better spot to win sooner. Where, no pun intended, but where Venables stands, I think he can duplicate it if he goes and gets the right hire and a Leach type hire, right? Not necessarily air raid, but a guy who's just going to man that side of the ball, where maybe you have an understudy like a Mangino, like we've talked about on the podcast, like a Chuck Long, or a guy who's sitting in the room saying, okay, I see what you're doing. I think we can continue to morph this into something into the future. But at the end of the day, I think the hallmark of the offense has got to be physical play. That is the number one thing when you watch OU. The line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball. You watch their defense and how that defense plays in the backfield now, how Jaden Jackson's playing in the backfield, how Dominic Williams is playing in the backfield, how RMT is getting in that is new. OU's offense does not do that anymore. When Brown, Samia, and Eric Wren and Ben Powers were playing offensive line, those Cody Ford, that they were pushing teams around. They were finishing blocks. There was some nasty, right? Mm-hmm. When they scored that touchdown against Ohio State in 2017, and Orlando Brown's hot mic is caught, and he's telling Trey Sermon, like, all right, now let's go F them up. That is the kind of nasty that they are missing on that side of the ball. Everybody go check that out. Cool hot mic moment. You just see the mindset of a guy like Orlando Brown, who, final year playing at Oklahoma. He was a guy who was a leader. Like, look across the line. Who's the leader on that line? Right? And do you have championship caliber teams if you don't have good leadership? So I think that is the number one thing that has to happen in terms of OU getting to that next level, is bring back physical football, even if it means getting under center a couple times a game. And just
if you want to see physical football, go get Tom Herman as your OC. Right?
I mean, yeah, they'd be physical. I think Tom Herman would not be a horrible OC, right? I think it would be a scary hire. I mean, but I think at the end of the day, he's a guy who's coordinated a championship level offense, and say what you want about Seth, he hasn't done it, and neither really has Lebby, right? But I think Lebby had a chance for growth, and Lebby was good at saying, Dylan, what are you good at? And when Jackson came in, the offense looked a little different last year. Jackson, what are you good at? They threw the ball into different windows with Jackson that they did not throw the ball into with Dylan.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact. So he was able to even morph it a little bit. So I think it's got to be a home run. It's got to be a guy who can control that side of the ball. And it's got to be a guy who can try to keep Jackson and or Michael Hawkins both on campus.
So the question that I want to ask you that I heard on the radio, I thought this was a really, really good question. And I'll ask the chat as well. You guys tell me. What do you want to see mostly this weekend? I think we win. Do we cover the 34 points? I'm not sure. I just want to get the win. I think we can cover, but it's going to take a couple of things to get there. But I heard the question on the radio asking, it was, what's more important for you to see? a 100-yard rusher or a 300-yard passing day?
I think that's actually a really good question. I think for the sake of the offensive line and the confidence of this team going forward, I think you need to see a 100-yard rusher. I think that the easy stuff in the pass game against a team like Maine is going to produce enough points to win the game. And if you have a 100-yard rusher, but Jackson goes out there and is 21 of 26 for 250, OU might cover the spread with 2 touchdowns and no INTs. That might be a spread cover if you've got a 100-yard rusher. You know, D-Mac, we had not a stake bet, but early in the year, I said Taylor Tatum would be the first back to rush for 200 yards if OU gets there this year. This might be the game that if they said we're going to commit to 1 or 2 guys and let it go, or if Tatum gets hot and OU says we're going to run the football, I will say what is more likely, it feels like Jackson throws for 300.
Yeah.
But that is only because this past game that this was, and you kind of alluded to this, it was the first game all year where things actually looked easy sometimes. You know, you watch good offenses play and they'll have the highlight thing, but 25 to 30% of what they do just looks easy, right? It's like he's throwing the ball and there's a guy wide open, right? But Bauer Sharp is wide open. Barnes is out there. And it was the first game all year where I saw Jackson not try to look for the home run play, but hit the outlet. Not try to pick up, and it paid off. Barnes able to catch the ball on a swing, 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage and then get upfield. That is very meaningful. That's a meaningful snap. And it was the first time all year that OU was in second and short a large chunk of the game. They've been in 2nd and 10. It felt like all season long, man. So at the end of the day, I think it is an indictment that Javonte Barnes is sitting at like 2 touchdowns, 3.6 yards a carry, and 376 yards on the year. That is an absolutely crazy stat, and one that, honestly, that's the kind of stat that says the whole staff is up for grabs with the guy who comes in. The fact that Tawee's probably going to rush for 1,000 or get to 1,000 yards, and you haven't had a running back at Oklahoma break 500 yet, and your leading receiver that's no indictment on Bauer Sharp, but your leading receiver is Bauer Sharp, and your second leading receiver is Deion Burks, who hasn't played for 4 games. Brother, that's bad.
That's real bad. That's real bad. No, I mean that's where we're at. That is the state of the offense, right? But if I'm asking myself this, I'm going to say 300 yards through the air, to be honest with you. Not because I think it's more realistic, but simply because I just think that you need to see that, right? I think you need to get a game like that for your young guy. I think, to me, I think the biggest element or the biggest thing that was missing from during the entire Latrell experience was a quarterback with a gunslinger mentality, right? Sure. You had guys that were hesitant to go ahead and sling that thing around. So that to me, I think that's what you were missing. But I would like to see you just kind of let it loose, because I think 300 yards, especially with the two tough road games. I mean, the game in Missouri, even though Missouri's not playing their best, it's still going to be a tough game. It's a rivalry game. And then on top of that, going to Death Valley as well, which most likely will be a night game too.
That's a night game, 100%. That's going to be 7 o'clock.
I would like to get them in rhythm. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I'm at, people, with that. We've been on here for about an hour. I think it's proper right now. Championship standard says give me a 300-yard passer. Points for the D.
Points for the D.
Let's see.
I don't think either one of those is going to equate to probably winning the game. So So there you go.
So so here's the question. Here's the last question for you. Why or why not is Brent Venables the guy to lead us where we need to be?
I think the answer is really plain in that he has changed the culture of the program and has brought a nature of physicality back to the program that was not there. And the Levy hire, the OU is a year removed from going, 10-3 was what they finished, right? And then you lose a lot of guys. You had a lot of attrition, but you saw the growth, right? And fans could talk about the Gabriel thing all they want. Gabriel left on his own volition. OU did not kick him out. I think that's pretty clear now amongst like those in the know and what they are saying. But I think Venables is still the guy because the culture has changed. NIL has been drastically improved during his time. He's a guy who can, kind of schmooze with the best as he develops as a head coach. And I think there's still room for growth. And here's what I would say. It took Kirby Smart a lot of growing pains before he got Georgia to where they're at now. And fans wanted Kirby gone pretty quick, right? They had Mark Richt, who was a regular every year. They were going to go 8-4, 9-3, right? They just miss out on the SEC title game. They go play in the Outback Bowl. And, and fans, they almost wanted that, right? Saban got Alabama, turned around a little bit quicker, but it took Kirby a minute to figure out what they needed and what a championship program at Georgia should look like. And it took him a long time to figure that out. And now, they're the model standard, right? He was a guy who was at a big-time program like Alabama, and it just took him a minute. But Georgia was patient. They put in they invested in him, and they said, we believe in you because we know you saw it done here. We know that you know how to get there. We're going to give you time, and we're going to give you resources. And when you find that mix, let's roll with it. And it just took them a little bit to find the mix of, here's also the problem. Something happens to your culture whenever you shift from an offensive heavy program to a defensive heavy program it almost is like the universe doesn't let you really have both, right? And when you have both, what do you have? You have a national champion. Well, when you have both at an elite level. But I think saw this in the chat. Do I think OU fans will be as patient with Venables as Georgia was with Smart? Not so much, right? You're moving to the SEC. You got to figure things out. But I think the reason that players trust him and think he's the guy for the job should really stand out to fans. I think that should be something that means a little bit because they know the man as a person. They know who he is and they know what he's about. And he is about playing winning football. And my question would be, if you go get somebody else, are you starting this sucker from scratch again? You don't want to do that.
I've seen a lot of people talk about Indiana's coach and all the rest of the stuff. And hey, they're having a great season. That's great. But it took time for him to get there. And
100%.
Let's be real. If he doesn't get snagged up, we got to make sure. To me, it's like basketball analogy. It's like playing 21. Sometimes when you're playing 21 at home or with your friends, okay, you go either you hit 21 or you go over 21. Okay, game. But some places, guess what you have to do? You got to confirm it, right? You score 21 or you score 22, but you got to get the next basket to actually win, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. We're seeing a lot of teams out there caught lightning in the bottle. What did people say about Missouri? Missouri is supposed to compete for a national championship this year. They're not. So lightning in the bottle, right?
Great point.
Tennessee, 2 years ago, everybody, they were building to that and all the rest of that stuff. And look, Tennessee and Missouri are in a better position than we are right now, where their feet are right now. You can still argue lightning in the bottle. So I think you got to confirm that, because if you go get a coach, I saw somebody say, why go get a coach that's never recruited the South before, right? That's never recruited like in the SEC territory. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of have to let it run its course. And for me, if this was next year and we're talking about the same situation, then yes, there's some questions that need to be answered. But right now, I'm saying this right here, people, he's fixed it before. I think he can fix it again. I think that you say, hey, don't do that. Let's get outside of the Bob Stoops, Mike Leach tree if we can. And let's go. If we're going to go back to that tree, go tell Kevin Wilson, hey, look, you've done a great job. You let Ormy come in here and score 49 points against you. Come on, let's do this. If you're going to go that route, if you're going to stay in that Mike Leach, Bob Stoops tree, coaching tree or whatnot, go get Kevin Wilson right down the street.
He gonna probably be up for grabs. I'm just letting y'all know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's not really insider, but Kevin Wilson gonna be up for grabs.
Yeah, I'm just saying, go get Kevin Wilson and be done with it. But you can make a move that will set you up for success. We have to hit a home run with this. And there's a couple of home runs out there, right? But you have to figure out which one best suits you. There are a bunch of duds. Do not get me wrong. There are a bunch of duds on the list, in my earnest opinion. But there are a couple of home run hires. There's not just one. There's a couple of home run hires that I think a lot of people will be happy with.
For sure. So
I believe BV is the person to lead us through. But with that being said, guys, we've been on here for about 1 hour and 7 minutes. It's already 10:12. It's time for us to, go to sleep. Barry, go ahead and tell everybody exactly where they can find you and all your content.
Absolutely, man. So if you're not a member, OUInsider.com, go over there to OUInsider.com. Get yourself a membership because we're doing awesome stuff over there. Didn't mention at the top of the show, Damian, my podcast brethren on our show, The Barry and Mack Show, is also posting 10 thoughts. Everybody loves it, but I do a zooming in feature where we take a look at the players individually, really dissect what's going on from a performance and schematic standpoint. But each and every week, me and Damian, we drop on YouTube. We're working on getting the feedback up on the podcast platforms, but it's the Barry and Mack Show. We do it live. Some are pre-recorded. And we also offer a special membership option where we will break down the film. We don't do it because, one, we don't want to put all the juice out there for opponents to see. But because Damian is offering up some stuff, I'm bringing in the performance insight, and we're really getting into the bones and the structure of what's going on the field. But it's $2.99. We made it as cheap as we could, and we may be recording some stuff tonight, if not tomorrow, going over what OU has done. But follow me on the X, man. I post a lot of the content that I post elsewhere. I'll post for free there if I feel like it's a good quality nugget. I did one on the offensive line. I'm going to do a Jacob Jordan video here pretty soon talking about the route running. But BWise Fitness, at letter B, WISE Fitness. And if you're in the Tulsa area, I got a local sports performance gym, but also do general fitness. It's at 101st and Sheridan, right on the corner. If you guys are looking to either elevate performance or your child's performance or get in shape with one of the classes that we offer, it's a barbell gym. So we're powerlifting, deadlifting, cleaning. We're doing all the cool stuff and we're getting after it, and it's fun. Or if you have anybody in your family, and this is not new, I've been doing this for a while, but this part of the business is elevated. If you have anybody in your family that is special needs, we are also DDS certified. So we're a vendor of the developmental disability services. So we actually provide strength training, health and wellness services to those who have special needs. And if you have anybody in your family or a loved one or a friend who you think could benefit from that, we can be covered by state subsidy, by state grant in order to provide that for them. We're working hand in hand with an organization out in Owasso that I won't name on here just for reasons, but is one of the things that was a passion that I didn't think would be a passion in life. It just kind of found me. So if that's something that you guys are looking for your loved ones or for a friend out there, just reach out. Phone numbers everywhere. You guys can go find it, or just stop by the gym, say what's up. It's always open during the day. So I would love to see you guys up there. But Chris, man, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Barry, hey, I was just gonna say this right here. People, all his info is down there. I got a link not only to the Barry and Mack show podcast on YouTube, but also I put your handle down there so they can find you on the X Sphere as well. So people definitely go hit them up, like, subscribe, get all of that content over there. As you guys know, I always talk about my uncle. My uncle always told me, he said, hey, if it's Chris Mason, if it's Barry and Matt, I'm listening to it. I got to listen to those guys. And so he helped me find Barry. He told me, he said, man, you got to reach out to Barry and get him on the show. So definitely thank you for always taking time to come on the show, man. So it's always a pleasure. But we got to do this a little bit more sometimes, man. We got to definitely
Absolutely. Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let's do it. Hey, the gym's called Be Wise Fitness, by the way. It's just my namesake. So swing by. I saw that comment in there. It's just my name. Look me up. I'm the only gym over there. There's a Genesis across the street. You don't want to go there. No. Unless they want to sponsor the show, then maybe. But yeah, it's right across the street.
Put that on. That's all in the bio, people. So if you want to find Barry and all his content, and also links and everything and stuff like that to his gym and everything, it's all there in the bio. So definitely go and look at that. Check him out. But with that being said,